Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel. Welcome to the Dice Tower. And I want to talk about a little convention that I went to a couple weeks ago, the AGPI convention. Now, AGPI stands for the Association for Games and Puzzles International. Now, you may not have heard of them, and it is a smaller group of people, but this is a group of people who are about collecting games. Now, you know, here at the Dice Tower, I'm all about playing games. Get games, play games, get games, play games. But there are people who really do like collecting games. And what makes the AGPI so interesting to me is that they're really interested in collecting games for their historical value. And I know this for sure because the games that they have there, there was old games that people were talking about, and just so many interesting things to see and have people talk about. Many of the people have been in gaming for many, many decades. I talked to people who knew Sid Sackson, who knew the great designers of years gone by, and had been around since the very beginning. They had different seminars that were there. One of the seminars was by the designer of Tribond, and one of the things I thought was interesting is he talked about game design and toy design, and showed off old toys and how they were invented. Another person talked about how Monopoly was used in World War II to help people break out of the prison camps in Germany. Another person just talked about older games, and then finally someone talked about puzzles and how mosaics can make up puzzles. And so these were really some of them were much more interesting than others, but it was kind of a fascinating thing. There was also a period called Show and Tell. Now, I haven't seen Show and Tell since kindergarten, basically, but this was very interesting Show and Tell. As people get up and say, here's a game from 1850, we saw a puzzle, one of the first puzzles ever designed in America. I took a picture of it so you can see it, a map of America. It's missing a piece, but this is from the 1800s. This sort of thing is really fascinating to see all of that. So when I was there, for example, I picked up a couple copies of these books, Bradley Games, 1936 to 1937, and the Parker Games, 1920 to 21. And these show some of these older games. Let's take a look. So I'm really kind of fascinated by this stuff, and I'm sorry that we can't take a longer look at these, because I could probably go through this book a little bit at a time, and maybe sometime in the future I will. But I mean, as you just look at these, the Battle Game, Battle Junior, Bombardment, this stuff from the 1920s. Here's Ping Pong. That's what it's called, folks, not table tennis. Ring the Pin. Rook. I didn't even realize Rook had been around since the 20s. Also, it doesn't seem to have changed very much, but there's Pit. I knew Pit was around since the early 1900s. So this is really cool stuff. And some of this stuff I saw in person. Here we see Bradley Games. This is a later period, the 1930s. And again, toys. You see they have backgammon and the Wheel of Fortune, although that's a very different thing. That looks more like a roulette wheel. There's a game just called India, which is definitely part cheesy. Yeah, maybe someday in the future, if people are interested in it, we'll go through these books and look at everything inside them. But like I said, this is the kind of stuff they had. The group also would take tours. There was a local puzzle factory that they took a tour of, and they do different things together. And they meet in different spots each year. This year, I was just very, very lucky that they met somewhere near me in South Florida. So we had a really good time. This was in West Palm Beach Hotel, the Embassy Suites. And like I said, a very small convention, but it was a lot of fun. And the reason I even heard about it and went was because they gave me an award. Now, I don't deserve any kind of awards at all. But if someone gives me one, I'll take it because it's very, very nice. And so I appreciated that. They gave me two things. One, they gave me a hat, which you can see here has all kinds of game components from games from here in the back. We got Clue, and here's some airplanes from a very old game, and all different games. So there you go, a new hat. But they also gave me this big award here, and I really like this because they said that I always say Dice Tower is not just Tom Vasel, and that's true. And so they just they put a lot of the different people on staff around me. So this was very nice of them to do. Overall, I had a great time. Me and my wife went. We enjoyed our time in West Palm Beach. It's a nice place anyway. Talking to people, learning so much about history, We got to go to a bunch of different things. That show and tell, which I wasn't sure about, was really fascinating. They had auctions for old games. They had a sale where you could buy stuff. That's where I got some of these old books. I found these things to be really interesting piece of history. So if you're someone who collects puzzle or wants to collect puzzle and help preserve the hobby, the interesting parts of our hobby, then check out gamesandpuzzles.org, gamesandpuzzles.org, or just look up AGPI, although I'll put games in there because there's another AGPI out there. But they have a convention every year. They talk about things. They know more about old games than I'll ever know. I got from 1990 to now covered. But everything, the 2 centuries before that, these people know way more than I'll ever know. And I'm really glad they came in. Also, the award was very nice. Either way, check it out. I'm Tom Vasel. This has been the Dice Tower. We'll see you next time.